Hey everyone, so today I wanted to talk about a special little penguin that we just got in the LGS pack, and that is, of course, Tux. Now, when I first read this card, I was like, okay, wow, that's a very good spirit. That stun ability is nice, his regular ability is good, but then I started thinking about like all the cards that interact with this, and I was like, oh my gosh, this card's amazing. So I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I've come across just in the past couple days that really got the creative juices flowing. And I don't know, maybe it will inspire some of you guys. Maybe I've come up with some things that you guys didn't think of. Obviously, some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about, people just randomly mentioned to me, and I was just like, wow, I didn't even notice that or think about it. So I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention and, I don't know, maybe get a discussion going on what you guys have been seeing with this card. So let's just read it real quick. It says, when a unit you control destroys a tower, you may draw a card, then discard a card. And then a Soul Burst ability is you pay 3 on top of Soul Bursting, and you stun all units your opponent controls. And that means that they can't attack, block, or use activated abilities until the end of the next turn. So, obviously very powerful Soul Burst ability. The activated abilities part is pertaining to exhaust abilities. That's pretty much the only thing that's activated. But not being able to attack or block is also very key. Something to note, though, is in this game, you can't really negate anything, right? So whenever an opponent attacks or is attempting to block, if you then Soul Burst in response, all of that still goes through because the action's already happening. It doesn't negate it. It just prevents them from doing it. So if it's already on the queue, it doesn't do anything. So please keep that in mind whenever you're playing this card. I did want to mention that. Now, the ability that allows you to draw a card and then discard a card is really great. And I think it's probably one of the key things that I was focusing on whenever I was thinking of all of these decks and combinations that kind of benefit off of that effect. So I just want to talk about Tux and maybe some changes to the meta that it's going to affect. So the first thing is I want to talk about the 2 meta decks that are actually going to benefit from this. The most, I mean. The big one is Liam and Aragon. Spoiler. But so what people are doing with Liam right now, obviously Liam Kite is one of the best decks in the format. I can't really say which one's best because there is a kind of triangle format. But Liam Kite is definitely a top contender. Now, the interaction with Tux. Obviously, you have a lot of deck thinning with Tux, right? Whenever you destroy a tower with Liam, you get to add a gear, and then you also get to draw a card and discard a card. So this gives you ways to actually discard 2 gears per turn with Liam and then Tux. So this brings you into kind of a elephant dot deck, really turbo into this. I know Liam Kite allows you to search Iskandar whenever you want, essentially with Vabriel's Final Gift, but this is another way to utilize deck thinning and getting gears into the discard zone to get out Iskandar very cheaply. With Liam Kite, you can only do it by discarding with Liam's ability, or also just having a unit die that was equipped with a gear. Also, Tux lets you get additional gears into the discard zone for like Corm, War Room, or something like that. But the added benefit of running Tux is you get to run cards like Ancient Serpent's Breath, which is pretty much a Guiding Winds on steroids. It allows you to bounce back your Repper Bloom and save it while also drawing a card. Same thing that Guiding Winds does. But on top of that, you also have that additional Shard Drain ability where you can also put something back on the top of your opponent's deck to, put them back a turn. So, like I said, Guiding Winds on steroids. You also have the option of running Mizu, which is a very good Omega Magic. It's kind of another version of Ancient Serpent's Breath or Guiding Winds, while also being able to be defensive in the late game. So that's nice. You also get to run Mayu if you wanted to, or Juggernaut, Phantasmal Storm. There's a lot of really nice blue cards. You can also run Chronostasis too if you wanted to run the finishing ray along with the chronostasis. I don't know, get nuts. But yeah, that's something that I've seen people run. I've seen some people suggest running just mono light with Tux as your spirit, so no blue cards. But I think blue actually does add some benefit to it, just like I was mentioning with Ancient Serpent's Breath. So that's something that I think you're going to see a decent amount of, especially because Tux's stun ability, being able to get in there without any kind of block from your opponent. Like if you destroy a light tower, it's one of the last towers or something that you have to destroy and it would prevent you from winning. Tux now stops that. So Liam is definitely a top contender. The other one is Aragon, obviously. Aragon is by far the most busted champion we have. Not only does it let you thin your deck by exhausting and sending top 2 cards of the discard zone, but also being able to put any target unit back on the top of your deck is one of the reasons why it was forbidden in the first place. And it interacted with Fizzy a lot because he kept just putting Mayu back on the top of your deck and shuffling through these powerful spells and casting them for free with Mayu. So they eventually forbid Aragon. Now we do have Bone Scavenger, which has put Aragon in check a little bit. But with Tex coming out, Aragon now turns back more into a control deck. It doesn't depend as much on the discard zone anymore, while also being able to put powerful units back on the top of the deck, like Juggernaut or something like that. The big problem with Aragon Fizzy was if you hard drew like your Shade or something like that, you didn't have any real way of getting it to the discard zone. Now you do with Tux. You don't have to add any additional cards in your deck. You just have to run a Spirit, which is better than Fizzy in my opinion. You get to thin out your deck, discard cards that you won in the discard zone. And then on top of that, you have this stun ability. Now, Aragon, of course, is the champion that gets to abuse stun the most. Why? Because, one, you can use Aragon's ability to put Eccentric Visitor back on the top of your deck and then continue to flip your Tux back up and have almost unlimited stun abilities. So that's one thing. The second thing is you have Yami, which can also bring back your Eccentric Visitor, maybe in response to a Bone Scavenger, so you can get it back that way. Yeah. So Dark being able to utilize Yami to abuse Eccentric Visitor and the Soul Burst ability of Tux, I'm definitely seeing Aragon and Tux being an extremely strong combination going forward for sure. So those are the two big decks that I think are going to benefit from Tux the most. But I do want to mention some other decks that I think really benefit from Tux now and may make them viable. So the non-meta deck that I think benefits the most from Tux is probably Hellena. Now, I have to give a shout out to a guy named Tom Berry. I don't know if he's subscribed to my channel, but he did comment on one of my videos, and he mentioned that Hellena Tux is a very interesting combination because Tux allows you to discard cards from your hand, like Leyu, or Pewter Gargoyle, which is another card that I showcased in my Hellena Luna deck. So the big thing that was hurting Hellena was there was no real way to discard cards to the discard zone to utilize like Yami or anything like that, or in this instance, Leyu. So I ran Luna because you got to use the Nightmare Crystal. And also, it had some other additional benefits like the on-demand discard from Luna's Soul Burst, which utilized things like Pewter Gargoyle. But I digress. So Tux Hellena has a real shot now, too, at becoming a viable control deck. One, because Hidden Laboratory is pretty nuts and busted. It's a lot of drawing and recycling, especially now that we have Leyu, and that's something that I showcased in my Hellena Luna deck. But on top of that, we go back to that Soul Burst ability. Hellena can create a lot of tokens, and it can be a very aggro strategy. Being able to utilize Hellena with that stun ability, and of course, bringing back Eccentric Visitor with the Yami is something that you really get to abuse. So I think Hellena and Tux is an extremely viable control deck going forward. Hellena offers the ability to have hand control. So being able to pick out the cards that your opponent's going to be holding for whenever you actually use that stun ability is going to be picked at with Hellena's Golems. That's something that really specialized in. It was a little too slow. But now the Soul Burst ability of Tux can help you get to the mid game with Hellena. So I think this is going to be a very nice, viable strategy going forward. So the next champion that I want to talk about in relation with Tux is actually Ariana. So I made a deck with Ariana, which was Ariana Corona, because I was struggling with ways to make Ariana viable due to the conflicting nature of Tempest Punch and then also Ariana's Resolve. But Tux fixes that, because I was complaining how Ariana's Resolve is a really nice busted card, but in order to actually make it viable, you needed ways to discard Kala out of your hand, and the only way to consistently do that was with Kite. But it was counterproductive in my opinion, because as soon as you would get out some kind of monster, you would have to bounce it in order to actually get full value out of Ariana's Resolve. Now you have that ability with Tux. As soon as you break that first tower, you can dump that Kala in the discard zone and then have it pretty much in there to get full value out of your Ariana's Resolve. Ariana also brings an interesting aspect to Tux, but in a way to counter it. This is like the first time in the game's history so far where I think Ariana's Amulet becomes viable, because this is a legit Soul Burst ability that you're going to want to make your opponent preemptively use. So Ariana's Amulet now has, I guess, a decent ability where they're going to have to shotgun that Tux, not knowing if it's going to be worth it or not if they want to do that. So Ariana's Amulet, definitely something that could be used against Tux. Now, I don't know if this deck has enough juice with Tux, but it does add some viable combinations now, being able to discard that Kala out of your hand with Tux as soon as you break that first spirit. So that was something that I also enjoyed with Tux. So the last deck that I wanted to talk about is kind of spicy. And maybe it's not a deck, it's kind of just all theory shooting right now, but I did not even figure this out. This was Tyler Lee Deering. He actually was messaging me on Facebook and asking me what I thought about Tux, and he actually brought up a really cool idea, which was something that I didn't notice. But Tux says whenever a unit you control destroys a tower, it does not say your opponent's tower. So as long as a unit you control destroys a tower, you can draw a card and discard a card. So cards like GZ, whenever you destroy your tower, you can draw a card and discard a card off of Tux's ability. So very cool to be able to do that. Also, Reckless Shard Beast allows you to do this by using its Arrive ability, destroying one of your towers. You'll gain the quickness, and then you'll also get to draw a card and discard a card. So Fire is a really interesting combination. We saw some decks actually utilize this during the interim phase between set 1 and set 2. They were running Jillian Corona to utilize stuff like Void Fire Desolation or Jamail Corona. I can't remember which one. I'm pretty sure it was Jillian Corona, but also Jamail Corona would be viable because you could pitch the Desolation with Jamail's effect and then have Mayu bring it back and cast it for free. But now you also have another way to do that. You couldn't have another way of discarding it, Void Fire Desolation, unless you were running Jamail or you had too many cards in your hand, which is something Jillian was known for. So now you can run a Rain Tux combo, or you can run Dragonholt if you wanted to, and utilize cards like GZ to destroy your own towers and discard cards you want out of your hand. If you can't break a tower, that turn. So you can utilize GZ to break a tower on your opponent's turn and set up your next play. Now, the reason I brought up Dragonholt is because we actually did get a new card in Expansion 3, which is Ready for War. So being able to pull this back with Mayu and then reveal top 5 cards and put as many revealed fire units into play is kind of like fun. It would be a really cool strategy. Again, I don't think it's very viable because you don't have a whole lot of good fire units right now that can utilize this. It's pretty much Juvenile Dragon, Ruka, things like that. But this is something that if we get just 1 or 2 decent low-cost dragons in set 3, I would watch out for this, man, because this card can be really nuts, especially when you cast it for free with Mayu on the field. So yeah, that was the last thing that I was thinking of with Tux. So these are all of the weird combinations and ideas that I'm kind of playing around with, and I'm thinking of building an Aragon Tux deck for this week to give like a legit competitive deck that could be used to win regionals and hopefully be viable for championships. I obviously, I'm not claiming to be one of the better deck builders out there for sure, but at least hopefully bring some kind of ideas to people, and then maybe they can fine tune it. But that's why I made this video today, guys, just to really showcase Tux and all of the viable options that are now out there because he's here. So I want to hear your thoughts, whether it's in the Facebook comments or also in the YouTube comments. Let me know what you guys have come up with, because a lot of the ideas that I have here today were from people just kind of spitballing with me. So thank you very much to them. But if there's any more out there, let me know. Like, comment, subscribe, guys, if you like the content. And as always, Zeppelin out.